So good afternoon to all of you, or perhaps there might be some of you calling from across the country, so it might be good evening or good morning. And I'm Ellen Ermer. I am one of the organizers for the ASQ Lean Enterprise Division webinars. And today we have the pleasure of hearing Jay Arthur speak on turning data into dollars. So just a couple reminders here. Next in April 14th, our speaker will be Ernest Miller, and he will talk about using IoT to drive quality improvement in the manufacturing process. Another reminder, a lot of you ask about how do I get the credits for attending this, and you should automatically get this certificate within 24 hours after the webinar completion. So that will come to you via email if you have attended. And another reminder, in using this particular application, if you want to ask questions, please go into the question area here where it says questions and type in your questions. I will be paying attention to that. And then at the end, we're leaving time to ask questions. So I will present those to Jay and he will answer those. And if you have any other concerns or questions too, you can put those in there. So Jay Arthur is known as the Nowhere Man and teaches people how to eliminate defects and deviation in one day using Excel and other processes. He's a frequent speaker at Lean Six Sigma conferences. He's written many popular books, and he has built software on mainframes, mini computers, PCs. He's just, I think, done quite a bit in the software, in the software industry. So without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Jay. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks. Now we're going to have to see if we can get my screen to show.
Yeah.
You may have to there we go.
Yep.
Ah, there we go. It's ready. Come on, show my screen. There we go. You should have a screen. All right. So anyway, hi, I'm Jay Arthur, author of Lean Six Sigma Demystified, Lean Six Sigma for Hospitals, and a new book called Agile Process Innovation. And I'll send you a link where you can download that toward the end when we get done. So I've been at this 30 odd years now. I find that hard to believe. In quality improvement, started in 1990 in the phone company. I did projects to help, save money and different things all over the company, and left in 1995 to start my own company. So this has been quite a journey for me. And so I work with people in everything from healthcare to manufacturing, East Coast to West Coast, all over the country, around solving problems. And one of the things that I found was that it's important to start to figure out how do we really get big bucks out of Six Sigma and so on. Because I see far too many people who launch big Six Sigma programs, but they don't get any return on investment. And so that's saddening. I don't know how that happens, but that's how it goes. So what I want to do is share with you what I've learned over the last 20 plus years, where I really started to dig into turning data into dollars. Now, from a lean perspective, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do from a lean direction to make dramatic improvements. And what you want to do is at some point, you're going to start hitting a wall where there's certain kinds of problems and issues really start to get in your way. And so I'm going to offer you a way to go about turning data into dollars using Microsoft Excel. So as Shigeo Shingo said, your business is like a banana. It's 46% waste. And I think for those of you who have been leaning everything, it's not quite that bad, right? But there's still some issues, some defects, some deviation, and what we want to do, pinpoint those problems. Now, these problems are not always on the production line. I find way too often, it's in marketing or sales or purchasing or payments or invoicing or orders or whatever it is, if you get the product order wrong, it doesn't matter how good your product is, right? That's where it goes wrong. It's not going wrong on the factory floor, it's going wrong elsewhere. And we also see this a lot in healthcare. So I work with healthcare as well. I think most of the people on this call are manufacturing, so I'm going to lean toward that direction. But I want you to understand that we can do this in service industries, banking, manufacturing, the service side of manufacturing. Most people don't actually work in manufacturing anymore, right? It's all the back room that's taking care of everything else, and everything else is run more or less more and more automatically, right? There's so much automation now that it's kind of different. So that's what we want to do, is figure out a way to kind of see if we can't fix this. So, from Jerry Maguire, Show Me the Money. Over the years, I've led projects that saved $20 million in postage, $16 million in adjustments, reduced order errors in a wireless country by from 17% to 3%, saved $3 million a year. And with one hospital system, we reduced denied insurance claims that saved $5 million a year. And most of these things were done with simple process changes, not expensive technology. We didn't have to buy a bunch of stuff. And the only thing that these projects all had in common were pivot tables, Excel pivot tables. Every multi-million-dollar project I ever worked on started with a pivot table, right? So pivot tables are kind of a power tool, and I don't see people teaching those in Lean and Six Sigma programs, and I'm not sure why. So we're going to talk about those in some detail. So if you have data that looks like this, and here you can see we have some regions and some entities, different kinds of hospitals, admit dates, denied insurance claims. Well, here's the where it happened, when it happened, what happened. These are different kinds of function codes and things, and denied charges of how much money we lost. Well, that could be worth $5 million a year. That's a lot of money. Half the hospitals in America are underwater. They're losing money, in financial trouble. $5 million a year would go a long way towards solving that. And it might actually allow them to hire people to do key things that aren't being done as well as they could, that would lean out that whole process. Healthcare's been chasing lean as a methodology here for a while. So they're pretty familiar, or getting familiar with how to use lean. So here's another example. This is some data that looks like scrap stuff, right? So this is a manufacturing company I worked with that had scrap weight. And you can see, when did we have the scrap? Where did it happen? What machine was it on? What type of error occurred, and how much scrap did we have? Well, that was worth $1 million a year. Well, $1 million a year is a lot of money. And, they thought that saving 50 grand a month would be nice, but $1 million a year, that's pretty good, right? So, and if you're in a publicly traded company, when you start taking all of the waste and rework out, all that money falls to the bottom line, which makes share prices go up. Everybody gets better bonuses. There's a lot of good things that come out of what we're trying to do. So one of the things I want you to get this idea of is that most data is overcooked, over-summarized, over-everythinged. And so it has little or no nutritional value. So if you see things summarized by week or month or quarter or year, oh my gosh, there's no way to drill down and figure out what's going wrong. So I'd like each of you to consider going on a raw data diet. Now, a raw data diet, every company has systems. So you have orders and invoicing, purchasing, payments. Somebody's tracking scrap, somebody's tracking defects, somebody's tracking variability, somebody's tracking all this stuff, right? And so those numbers live in computer systems and manufacturing systems and medical record systems. There's all this data out there that no one is using or mining to try and find the key things that would really make their business sing. All right, so I have found that the minimum raw data requirement is you need to know when and where and what happened. So when did it happen, where did it happen, and what happened? If you know those three things, it gets better and easier to pinpoint exactly what is going wrong. All right, so this is the key tool. If you know how much scrap or how much denied charges or whatever, or who was involved and anything else you know about it, that's even better. But that's the minimum daily requirement right there. So how do we start to turn data into dollars? Well, we're going to start with raw data. Every time there's a defect, right, we're going to track each one of those things. Then we're going to use pivot tables to summarize the data. Now remember, before I said, summarized data is bad. No, pre-summarized data is bad. When you have the raw data, you can go back into it and see exactly what contributed to the main problem, then guess what? You're on a path of being able to fix stuff. And then what you want to do is create a compelling improvement story using control charts, Pareto charts, fishbones. And when you do that, leadership will listen to you and say, oh, I think we ought to fix that. So pivot tables will help us summarize. Then you select the right chart, and then you start doing some presentation, right? And once leadership understands the pattern of what the presentation looks like, it becomes easy to sell the next improvement project, right? If your data is too confusing, I don't know about the rest of you, but I go to all these trade shows and I see everybody's improvement project, and it's like they're trying to write War and Peace, right? And they might have a line graph somewhere or a bar chart or a pie chart, which are, by the way, the three stooges of charts. These people, and then people are reading, all this stuff, and I'm going, oh my gosh, that's awful. And I see this at the ASQ World Conference too. So, it's not just ASQ, it's not just healthcare, NAEQ, Institute for Healthcare Improvement. I see a lot of this, and it's kind of sad. I don't know why. I talk to a lot of people in various sections of ASQ, and they say the one thing that we're really deficient in is the tools of quality. And I'm like, what? We're the American Society for Quality. We ought to be sharp at this, right? We ought to be super. Okay, so we're going to use pivot tables to start to refine your data. So the nice thing about pivot tables, if you've used pivot tables, they'll count the occurrences of keywords, phrases, numbers, sum or average numbers, turn all this raw data into knowledge and help you drill down into the piles of data. Now, I've worked with as little as maybe 200 records and as many as 50,000 records. And that's about all you need, right? You don't need, big data, right? Small data. Small data, Pareto patterns of things exist in small samples of the data, and you can figure stuff out from not a lot of data. So I want you to get this idea, there's big profits in small data, right? That's why we want to turn data into dollars. Big profits, small data. And I tell you, once you learn how to do this, people will not let you go. When I was in the phone company, the vice president of quality came to me and said, we seem to have an excessive amount of postage. It keeps going up every month. And so I got into my pivot tables, started drilling down, and we pinpointed exactly what was going wrong. And we're able to fix that. And I also did that around adjustments. We were paying $25 to make an adjustment to a customer bill. And often those adjustments were $1 and $2. Well, that's kind of silly, right? Spending $25 to give away $2. So we set it up so that all the service reps could actually go ahead and issue credits up to a certain level. I forget what it was. But that saves $16 million a year in adjustments. And so that was going along. But meanwhile, the rest of the quality organization, for some reason, got stuck in process mapping and not improving, right? The process. And our process maps covered walls and walls and walls. So eventually our leadership team got tired and said, well, this isn't working. And they shut down the quality department. And I remember going into this meeting, and announced that, we had 2 weeks to kind of get our stuff together, and we were out. And I went back to my desk sort of depressed because I thought I was doing good stuff. And I got back to my desk, my phone rang. It was the vice president of quality. I mean, of finance, vice president of finance. And she said, I want you to come work for me, because I'd have helped her save $36 million in a year. She thought I was okay, right? So these are the kinds of things that can benefit you personally and your company as well. Sorry, I went off on a, on a tangent there. But anyway, so your spreadsheet must have a column, and it has to have a unique column. You can't use the same words and phrases all over again. The cells with no data should be left blank. So you don't want to put asterisks or crazy things in there. Just leave them blank, right? Excel will ignore them, but it'll try and summarize them if you put something in there. And so the data should also be consistent. So if you're going to do Colorado Springs, Colo Springs, Sea Springs, make them all the same as much as possible. I worked with one healthcare department. You have no idea how many different ways people spell Medicare. They spell it all of the characters: Medcare, MDCR, MDC. And it was like, oh my gosh. So we had to clean up. Sometimes you have to clean up what's in there so that you can actually summarize it effectively. All right. Let's see. Continuing on. So all you have to do is to select your data is click on any cell, and I have a pivot table wizard that'll figure it all out. Their pivot table wizard will figure it all out. Or you can just click and drag over the cells to select them. Once you do that, you want to design your pivot table. So you can click on dates, you can click on anything and drag or drop them into different locations. And then Excel will go summarize all that for you. And so it'll give you a summary. And that gets you where you're going. Now, so I'm going to start with, in the QI macros, we have some sample data. I'll come back to this one in a second. So we have some data mining data down here. And you can see here, make that a little bigger for all of you. We have by date, by line, this is a packaging plant, type of defect, folded flaps, whatever, right? And I see people trying to count this the hard way, right? They're stroke tallying how many times folded flaps are in this list. No, pivot tables will do that for you. And I've done this with people for things like shipping problems for food delivery, right? So there's, they're shipping milk and eggs and whatever, and they're trying to figure out why are we losing produce and food and everything else in transit, in a train or wherever it is, wherever it's going to. So these things can be anything like that. Here's one called lost time analysis. So this is type of failure was generator failure. How long did it fail? Again, in nursing, it would look like this: by date, by nursing unit, what type of patient harm. For those of you who don't know anything about healthcare, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement knows that 1 out of every 2 patients in a hospital suffers some sort of preventable harm. Some sort of preventable harm. And so if we could get to 0 harm, which is one of their objectives, that would be really good for all of us, right? Especially the aging population like me. All right, so these are the kinds of things that we worry about. Here's what the data looked like for the denied insurance claims. So we have denied charges here. It could be something like ICU sedation medications, patient falls. We could have things like this where we just have words that are in a given setup. And so what we want to do is figure out how do we take this and turn it into something useful. So again, with Excel, all you have to do is click anywhere inside of your data and go to Insert, Pivot Table, and it'll select the range for you. And here you can see it started. And I can say, well, I want to see date, and I want to see by line, And I might want to drag line over here so I can count it. So I'm going to count the number of lines. And so here you can see by date, we have the number of lines that were out there. So I could take all that data and I could come in here and I could say, okay, well, let's draw a control chart of defects by line. And so in the QI macros, we have a control chart wizard that'll go do that for me, figure out what that should be, and turn out a chart. It's being kind of slow. Of course, I'm uploading, downloading lots of data. So here's our control chart of performance over time. You can see we had a couple of out of control points, but in general, stable, hovering around 8.5 defects per day. So that's how we start to get there. But then maybe we want to know it a different way. So let's uncheck date and let's check defect. And so here you can see we have different kinds of defects summarized by count of line. So I could take that and I could turn that into a Pareto chart and it'll summarize those. And here you can see that we have folded flaps, bent and damaged flaps, and carton will not open are almost, 2/3 of all the defects. So if I could fix those three things, that'd be great, right? That'd be super. But I could do this a different way. So I could get back in here. I could change this, and maybe what I want to do is put it up here by line. So I can drag and drop into the column one of these things again. So I'm dragging and dropping the line count in here. And so here you can see we have by line, we have all of those. We might want to know, what's going on here. And by line, we could say, well, I want a Pareto chart. Oh, that's not going to work. Grab the wrong stuff. Sometimes when you do things, Excel fights you, but you get it done. Okay, so if we look at it by line, line 3 has the most defects, right? And, well, that's something. And so we could go into line 3. One of the cool things about Excel is you can double click on any one of these numbers in here, and Excel will bring up all the raw data behind it. So this is where we start to drill down, right? Drill down into these specific things. So if I'm just going to focus on line 3, I could double click on that. And here you can see that we have by line 3, all the different stuff in here. But I could actually take this and turn this into a Pareto chart as well, right? I think I have probably too many lines in here to do this the easy way. But I could turn that into another pivot table. Now what you're seeing here is me doing this kind of in high speed. So by line, we have type of defect, and we also have how many defects were occurred. So in line 3, there's our 210, you can kind of see. What type of defects are most common in line 3? Well, again, I can show that to be a Pareto chart. So in line 3, folded flaps are 40% of the total. So you get an idea of what we're doing in terms of being able to see and drill down and tell that, in line 3, we have a problem. And if we wanted to, we could come in here and make that line 3 defects, right? And then we could come in and put in a fishbone diagram that says during this time frame, folded flaps accounted for umpteen% of all these things. In the QI macros, we actually have a fishbone template, and we could do the easy one or the hard one. So we could come in here and say, during such and such a time, let's say 2020, folded flaps accounted for 39.5% of defects, of line 3 defects. There we go. And then I could actually create that as a fishbone, right? So I could start my process for having a fishbone diagram. We also have smaller ones that you can use as well. Now, what I normally do is during 2020, folded flaps counted for 39.5% of line 3 defects. And in Excel, you can take something like this and you can move or copy that. And I could move that over into my data mining document. And I could move that to the end of my Pareto charts. So I could put that over into my chart so that I have these different things. So I'm actually building an improvement project here, right? So I don't like that one. I draw lots of charts and then I throw them away. So, and just so you know, they're recording this one, and so there'll be a recording this in not too long. But there's our line chart. There's our first Pareto. Here's another Pareto. We drilled down into line 3 and we built a fishbone diagram. So this is starting to build a really good improvement project, right? And what you just saw me do, it used to take me hours and sometimes days to do stuff like this, because I was learning how to do this, right? So this is a pretty straightforward thing to do. And then a few years ago, I actually built that into the QI macros as the improvement project wizard, but I'll show you that in just a minute. All right, I'm going to close that fishbone. So we've really done it. And so we've taken the raw data, we've summarized it, and then we're going to turn that into a story. And I believe that your story is the thing that will drive leadership into funding the analysis and things of that nature. If you have a good story, they will not ignore you, all right? And if they want to ignore you, then I can't help you with that. That's a problem I can't fix. All right, so what chart do I choose? Well, far too many people live on line graphs and run charts because line charts are in Excel, they're ubiquitous, or bar charts. But a control chart will really tell you how you're doing. And then once you make an improvement, can you actually show that you reduce the variation and move the center line in your chart, yes or no? And if it doesn't move, you didn't fix anything. Right? I've seen far too many people that have a before and the after, and their after is the same. We were at a conference and we had the Baldrige examiners across from us, and we were demonstrating how to show process changes and stuff like that. And the lady from the Baldrige examiners came over and said, we get a lot of people who show us their before, but they don't show us their after. So you have to be able to show an after, right? That you actually made an improvement. All right, so, and then I like the Pareto chart because once you get it in there, let's see, there's somebody who's asking what data analysis macro am I using in Excel? I was just using pivot tables to do the data analysis. I was using QI macros to actually draw the charts. So that's our product, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. I almost never use scatter diagrams. And then if we need to, we have histograms that actually show, the dispersion of the data. So if you have a lot of variability, we get around to histograms. But I find there's way too many things you can solve with a control chart, a Pareto chart, and a fishbone. So this is what I think it ought to look like. Control charts lead to Pareto charts. So there should be a high-level Pareto chart, line 3, and then we drill down into the lower-level Pareto chart, which was folded flaps, were the main problem in line 3, right? So the high-level Pareto, a lower-level Pareto based on the big bar. Then we can come up with a fishbone diagram. Now, let me explain something to you here. I don't know about how you were trained, but when I was trained, they said, oh, just get some people together and brainstorm something to work on. It's like, oh my gosh, no. All right. If you let the data lead you through the narrowing process to the focus, guess what? You will then know who should be on your team. In the example I just showed you, right, it was people on line 3 who know something about folded flaps. I don't need anybody from line 1 or line 2. I don't need people who know something about the type of cement they use to connect it all together. I don't need to know that. I don't need to know what kind of adhesive, because it's not a folded flap problem, right? So I know who should be on my team. And when you do this, I guarantee your team can be successful. I don't like to start teams that can't be successful. I know this because I did a few of those early on following the brainstorming advice. And eventually I got into, no, I'm just going to use raw data, and the data is going to lead me where we're going. All right, so let me show you this example. And this is the healthcare example. So again, I took all of that healthcare data. And again, the healthcare data looked like, what did it look like? There it is. So it looked like this. So by region, by admit date, by entity, denied charges, with a bunch of other happy hoo-ha in here. What we did was I summarized that and turned that into a control chart. Right, and so then the control chart showed that they were losing $1 million+ a month. These are charges coded as pure denial, so they didn't get any money. And you hate to do work and not get money, right? Would you like to do work and not get money? No. So anyhow, then what we did was started to look down into the code. What was the number one reason why they were having denied claims? Well, it turns out that it was like 7.8 million were due to timely filing. Now this leads to something I call the 450 rule. Something is really driving the process. If you get a big bar on a Pareto chart, a bunch of little bars, you got something you can fix. If you have a whole bunch of flat bars, I call that a perflato chart. A perflato chart is not going to help you. You can't fix anything. You got to go find where there's some big bars and then a bunch of little bars. All right, this is how that works. So anyway, what we did here was, again, this is the 80-20 level Pareto. So I took timely filing and I drilled down into the timely filing stuff. Right. So this is Pareto's rule is that 20% causes 80% of your mistakes, errors, waste, rework, lost profit, patient harm, whatever it is. And that still applies within the 20%. All right. So within the 20%, 4% are producing 64% of the errors. I just call that the 450 rule. So 4% is producing over half your errors, mistakes, rework, lost profit. And one of the great things about this is that means you don't have to fix everything in your business. No, it's just a tiny little bit. And 4% is 4 steps out of 100, or 1 step out of every 25. I call that the $1 million misstep, right? Somewhere along in here, we do something and it causes all this waste and rework. So let's go pinpoint that and fix it. Does that make sense? So we drove down deeper into this. So I took timely filing and then I pushed it down into looking at it in different ways. And it turned out that one insurer was 67% of the total, right? That's my 450 rule, right? Just right out in front of me. And I continue to see this almost everywhere I go and all the data I look at. All right, so this gives you some idea. So we start at the 80-20, we go down to a 450 level Pareto. That lets us figure out what's going on. Now I have to tell you that when I went to this hospital system, they said, well, are you a doctor? Are you a nurse? No. Well, then how do you think you can help us? I said, because I haven't bought into all of your nonsense about how healthcare works. So my job is to simply look at what you got and see if I can't figure it out. And they said, well, we've been studying this for over a year and we still haven't figured out how to fix it. Well, okay, give me some data, let me look. And it took me about 3 days to do all this analysis. I can do it a lot faster now with the improvement project wizard. But what happened was they looked at this and I showed it to them and they said, oh my gosh, really? And they were able to do some root cause analysis. Another nice thing about this is once you narrow it down like this, your root cause, your fishbone diagram isn't very complicated, right? You don't get whalebone diagrams. If you've got whalebone diagrams covering a wall, that means you didn't get narrow enough in your focus to begin with. So you get a very simple fishbone diagram. And so they found out what was going on. They came up with some ways to do that manually, to work around these folks, and then work at them to resolve these issues because they were under contractual whatever. And then we measured the end result. Well, we went down by about 400,000 a month, almost $5 million a year. And as you can see with this control chart, we're showing the before and the after. So this is how big it was, too much variation, 1 point something million a year. And we went down to about 690,000 a month. Didn't get all of it, but we got a lot of it, right? And they went on to work on other things within there. They found $24 million in rejected claims and other stuff that they could fix. But this is the one that was real dollars, all right? So that's kind of what a great improvement project should look like. And I see very few of these. But I think with pivot tables and a little bit of control charts, Pareto charts, and fishbones, you can get there. You don't have to use my tool, but you can use other tools. But I just think my tool is easier to use. So we have an improvement project wizard that makes all of this improvement stuff simple. So I'm going to come back over to my data here. So I did carton manufacturing defects. This one's going to look a little similar, but this is patient harm in a hospital. I can take two headings here, and about 2017, I put together something that would do all that analysis, because I'm lazy, do all that analysis for me, right? And then I built it into the QI macros. So we're an add-in for Excel to do all the charts, like control charts and fishbones and histograms and so on. But I also really, because I really do a lot of data mining, I had a pivot table wizard, we have word count wizards and so on. But the improvement project wizard will go out and take your data, summarize it, look for control charts, look for the high level Pareto chart, look for the lower level 450 Pareto chart, come up with fishbone diagrams, and find every project it can. And here you can see it found, so it created a control chart. And we have project 1. It has a high level Pareto, a low level Pareto, and a fishbone diagram. And it created a problem statement, because I find people sometimes don't know how to create a problem statement. So I did my best to create it for them. And then it found another way to look at this as well. So if we go down to you'll see all the little things down here. We'll just walk through them. So it created, again, defects by unit, patient harm by unit. And this is the same data as the other data, so don't be surprised. But I'm just trying to give you a sense of the headings may change, but the data remains the same, right? Unit 3 is the big problem. And within Unit 3, patient harm is most of our patient falls are most of our problem. And then it'll create a fishbone diagram. So now I have one way to look at my problem, but it doesn't stop there, it keeps going. So within that patient fall is most of our types of harm. There were some other ones in here. We might address those later. And then within that patient falls, one unit is 79% of the falls. And I was talking to one nurse and she said, oh, that's exactly true. At our hospital, we figured out that it was in the ortho recovery room, recovery area, it was men between 20 and 40 that were falling all the time. That's where most of our falls were. Well, of course, after you've had orthopedic surgery and you're 20 and 40, you think you can get up and run around, and you can't, right? So they pinpointed that. And of course, they could figure out how to fix that. And again, here's it creates a fishbone, fishbone diagram with a problem statement. So now I have two different ways to look at my data and decide what I want to do. All right, so this makes it super simple to take that raw data and turn it into improvement projects. And, there are other things that can be done with pivot tables. All right, let me get back here. So one of the things I'm trying to do in the world is automate as much as possible Lean and Six Sigma so that the average Joe or Susie can learn it in a very short period of time. Now, I have spent the last 20 odd years continuing to shrink how long it takes me to train people by making and automating things in the QI macros. So this is what I'm trying to get to you is with raw data, you can come out and create your own improvement project, write defects, drill down, come up with a fishbone diagram. Then you can pick the right people to be on your team. And I'm telling you, when you get this detailed and this narrow in your focus, it's very easy to fix things. Unfortunately, people want to boil the ocean and they try to expand the scope. No, drill down, fix one thing at a time, and it'll happen very quickly, and then you can move forward. So I hope this gives you some idea about finding the story in your data, learning how to slice and dice your data, right? So that you can figure out what's going on. I make lots of charts and I throw half of them away, maybe more. And then I keep the ones that tell the story that I want the leadership team and the people working there to understand. All right, so let me come back to just something else for a moment. Let me get over to my data. So just let me tell you a little bit about this. If any of you want to, there we go. Nope, missed it. If you go out to our website, qimacros.com, this is me talking about Agile for healthcare, but you can see here I have an Agile Lean Six Sigma ebook, and this will describe how I'm talking about doing this in great detail, and then you can there we go. And let me see if I can get into our there's our chat box. So let me send that out to everybody. So this is a link to the book, and you're welcome to go in and see how I think people can achieve this. You can also go out and download some presentation slides from my Agile presentation. This is not it, but we will get those slides from this presentation to you after the fact. And then I have a little Lean Six Sigma mini manifesto. I also, under QI macros, we have free training. So I have a free yellow belt training, a free white belt training. I charge for certification, but I let everybody learn everything. And then I have a free Lean Six Sigma trainer training. So if you want to learn how I teach Lean and Six Sigma in one day and get results, you can come out and take my free Agile Lean Six Sigma trainer training, right? One of my objectives in the world is to create hassle-free America, hassle-free healthcare, defect-free, right? Zero harm, right? This is one of my objectives. And of course, I can't do that training 20 people at a time in a room. And I don't want to get in a plane and fly, and I can't do it anymore anyway because of COVID. But I can teach people how to do what I'm doing online, and I give it away for free, right? Because I think you're going to need QI macros to make this work the way you would like it to work. And then out on our website, we also have free video tutorials about the QI macros. You can download a free trial on any of our pages. So you can get a lot of free stuff, learning and information online right from our website. So here's another example. And again, I could take this one and I could go by date. I want to know scrap weight. I'm going to close. I don't like having too many things open all at the same time. right? So I could pick date and I could pick scrap weight, and I could ask the QI Macros Improvement Project wizard to go look at scrap weight and see if it can tell me what's going on, right? And so it's going to take a while because this is a little bit bigger data set, but it's going to bang through and figure out all the possible ways that things are going on. You can see here it found, again, 2 projects. This is actually real data, so drill down, and you can see here's our scrap weight by date, and then by type of code. So we had one code that was 21%. And most of that was on one machine. So that led us to a fishbone that said machine 240 accounted for 99% of scrap code H50. So I know who I need to work with, people on machine 240 who know something about scrap code H50. Right? This is great because it helps us get there. And then again, here we see 240 is the biggest one. And even within here, we're going to get the same answer, which is H50 is the big one. And then there's some others here that we might get to, but if we go fix that one thing, right? And this is the project that saved $1 million a year. Now, it took me a while to do this because I was doing this manually when I was first learning how to do it, but then I automated it in the QI Macros Improvement Project Wizard. So that's a high-speed trip through this whole process to get from raw data to something that you can actually turn into an improvement project that will really drive business results and hopefully save you millions of dollars. You know, and I've done trainings where I got people in a room for a day and they'd go find $90,000, $100,000 a month. And I thought, see, this is just, if you get the data and analyze it this way, I think you can make dramatic improvement in things that may have been difficult to move before. All right, so that was a high-speed trip through through data mining using Excel. So let's see what questions everyone might have.
All right, thank you, Jay. Data is extremely important. I'm a data geek, so I appreciate this. One of the first questions is, any recommendations for data integrity and purity?
Okay, one of the things, data integrity and purity. Well, as I showed you before, you want the names to be, the labels to be the same, so you don't want Medicare spelled 18 ways. You might have to clean some things up. Another thing is people often say, well, you know, that's not the right data. Well, then I say, well, do you have better data? Bring it, right? Or shut up. I'm just nasty about this, right? People don't. I don't believe this data. Well, shut up. Bring me better data. The other thing I have learned over the years is that all data is systematically distorted to make someone look good. All data is systematically distorted to make someone look good. It's distorted systematically. Now, the good news about that is that it's systematically distorted, therefore you can use it to make improvements. And most data, nobody looks at the data, so nobody does a very good job of collecting it, right? So once you start using the data, your data gets better. This is the Hawthorne effect, right? Your data will get better if you use it. And if you don't use it, they think, I don't have to report anything, right? So I'm going to encourage you that the data you have is already fabulous and good enough to start doing this. And as you start doing this, your data will get better and people will start to pay attention. So I wish I could tell you there was perfect data anywhere on the planet. There is not. Get over it. Sorry for the rant.
No, I appreciate that. I think, I've been doing this for many, many years, and I would agree with you. There's always challenges with that component, but you have to start somewhere and to get people to pay attention to the data, and then they're more apt or more maybe, to start collecting the data correctly. We're making sure it is collected correctly.
Right.
So yeah. Let's see, I think you answered this. How do you get access to the macros tab in Excel? But I think you spoke to, this is a separate
Yeah.
component, right? Element that you've added on, right?
Right. So the QI macros is an add-on for Excel, and you can go to our website, download a 30-day free trial. You know, it's only $299 a license, so very affordable, and you can get a lot done in a big hurry. And the Improvement Project Wizard, you won't find that anywhere else. And let me just mention some other things just for a second here. So for example, if we have here's some XMR chart data. But if you have data, you just select it with your mouse. If you're familiar with other products in this market, they ask you to go through a decision tree and figure out what chart you want to choose, then choose your data. QI macros asks you to select the data first. The advantage of this is I don't make you go figure out what chart to choose. I just say, oh, I can go look at your data and figure out what chart that should be. And so we have a control chart wizard that'll go look at that data, go single column decimal data. That has to be an XMR chart, right? And it'll draw that chart for you. And it doesn't matter if you're in manufacturing or healthcare. This is, again, falls per 1,000 patient days, but it'll give us a chart. And then you can see here, it looks like we might have had a process change down here. So we could actually use our process change wizard to discover that there is a process change. There's a whole nother menu I didn't even show you that does things to make charts pretty. So that's the QI macros. And where are we? And if you go out to our website, you can download a free trial just on about any page. We have the 30-day trial there. Works in Excel 2013 to 2019, 365 PC and Mac. So give that a go and learn how to use the tools of quality. And if you make it easy enough, I believe everybody can embrace it. If you make it too hard, they just stop. It's a terrible thing, but that's how it works. What else we got?
When creating a control chart, does your software, oh yeah, you just explained that, automatically select the proper type of control chart. So you just showed that.
Yeah. Yes. It makes its best guess based on the data you give it. You may think there's a better chart for it, and if there is, go use that chart. But it'll go XMR, XBAR, R, XBAR S, C, NP, P, and U. It'll get those attribute and variable charts. If you want a QSUM chart, no, I can't help you with that. I didn't build that into the chart wizard. I think people, Donald Wheeler says that the XMR chart is the Swiss Army knife of control charts. If you get good at the XMR chart, you're going to get a long way, a very long way. So I think we try and teach people too much stuff. We teach people things they don't need to know to solve problems they don't have, right? To impress people they don't like. So let's stop doing that. Let's just teach them what they need to know, not a whole bunch of other stuff. Sorry, long rant.
What is realistic time frame from raw data to realized dollars? Like how many days, months, I guess this person is asking.
Right. So the analysis can be done very quickly. Now, I have seen people like the healthcare people. They figured out what was wrong on Friday, changed their procedures on Monday, and started saving 400 grand a month. Other situations with the telephony company, it took them about 4 months to actually implement the changes in the information system, right? Get all that tested and all the requirements and everything else so that they stopped having these problems with their service orders. But it took it from 17% down to 3% and started saving $3 million a year in temp workers who were fixing stuff. So some things take longer to implement, right? But a lot of the things I've seen can be done procedurally. You know, I worked in the phone company on the stamp postage thing. We had to redesign the bill to make it smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That took about 18 months,
Mm-hmm.
but started saving a ton of money. So it's a question of the implementation of the countermeasures, not how long it takes to identify the problem.
Sure. There's plenty of variables that impact that. Somebody's asking, and I don't know how you want to answer this, but they're just asking, is QI macros better? Oh, I would say than some of the more, we'll just say advanced software tools out there, you know, that are involved in statistical analysis.
I don't think, well, I think our improvement project wizard is standalone, unique. Everybody else, you know, Minitab is $2,500. They'll draw the same control chart I draw with the same numbers and the same calculations. So now I think Minitab is great for statisticians and professors and students, because that's who it's designed for, is professors and students. But it's overly complicated. And this is an embarrassing thing to say, but I talk to people and they tell me things. They said, well, we bought all these Minitab licenses, but nobody's using them. So I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter how much you spend on your software. It only matters are people using it. And if they're not using it, then that's waste. And you're a lean group, right? You should know waste is not good. And even QI macros, if people don't use it, it's waste, right? But I find that people are more likely to use ours because you can learn stuff in about 5 minutes as opposed to 4 days. So, you know, there's a learning curve to some of these more complicated things, right? And there's people in the Statistical Association who are really enamored with R, which is a statistical programming language. Well, do you really want to be a programmer? I don't think so. I think you want, if you're a business person, you want to analyze stuff, get results, make improvements, and move on, right? This is not your life's work to be a programmer. Sorry, long rant.
No, that's okay. We have only a couple minutes left, so I'm looking to see, there's a couple questions here. In pharma and biotech, we are constantly challenged with how data is collected for
Yes,
FDA
absolutely.
regulations. Hence, data integrity is always our challenge.
Right.
How do you
There,
address that component?
yeah, so there is a product out there that can be added to Excel that provides data traceability. We don't do that. But once you have that data traceability with this add-on, and if you email our support guys, support@qimacros.com, they can tell you what I think that add-in is. So I understand that's the problem. But I think the opportunity here is if you can trace the data, and again, with raw data, guess what? You can work your way all the way back through your pivot table to the raw data. That's pretty magical, right? And so I can tell that this control chart was done with this data. I think you can make a case that that's traceable. And there are products that help Excel do that, but we don't do that.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for participating, for listening, and great questions. Please remember that we have another webinar coming up next week, next month. In addition, if you take a look on my ASQ and those types of things, we'll start advertising this. We're going to have a special webinar series that's starting at the end of this month with Greg Watson. So take a look for that, and those are all, that will be, I think, very engaged and very interesting. And with that, you should get your RU credits automatically in the email within 24 hours. So thank you, Jay, for your time, and thank you, everybody, for joining the LED webinar. Have a great afternoon.
And if anybody has any questions, just email them to jay@qimacros.com. I think we have some unanswered questions out there.
Yes.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank
all
you.
right, thanks all.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.